Welcome back, everybody, to Attract and Stand Out Virtual Summit. I'm your host, Darlene Holly. This year's summit is all about building a profitable personal brand and business that allows you to authentically show up and connect with your audience. I'm so excited to feature so many amazing business owners and share their powerful stories with you of how they started their business and what tips and tools they can share with you today to help you take back into your business for 2020. Today, I'm interviewing with one of my amazing friends, Jaime Palmer. She is recognized for in-depth understanding and use of specialized digital marketing methods necessary for hyper-competitive industries. Jaime is someone who's paving the way when it comes to growing your online business. She's been acknowledged as a successful marketer and leader of individuals and corporate teams with diverse backgrounds and experience levels. Jaime's also highly informed in a wide variety of methods and techniques used in corporate trainings and adult learning. She's an expert at building highly engaged online communities with leadership techniques. Jaime, thank you so much for being a part of the summit with us this year.
Thank you for having me, Darlene. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. So tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what even got you onto this path of starting your own business and doing it in the social media world.
Yeah, so I am an online business coach and strategist, and I actually started my business in college. 16 years ago, I was a senior in college and I couldn't find any jobs. And I was like, you know what? Let me just try this being in business for myself thing. And we originally started out, and I say we because it's a team now, but when I first started this business, it was a website design company because back then there wasn't even social media. And one of the things that I did is I would always be networking with other people and going to events. And I started to recognize that you could use LinkedIn and Twitter as tools to stay connected with these people after the event. And then Facebook rolled out profiles for everybody. And I was like, OMG, this is a super cool tool. And I just continued to add in and learn and educate myself. I went back to school and got a master's degree in leadership and information technology. And I really applied that to building communities in the online space. And it's just been a ton of fun and it's super cool. And my business is it's very different than when I started 16 years ago. We have both a done for you component and a done with you component, but it's really all things building an online business, because everybody forgets that when you build an online business, you have to create your office or your retail space or whatever it is in the online space. And there's a culture and a feel and an experience that you want to create for that customer on the other side.
Yeah, no, that's so true because it's different, right, than having a brick and mortar business where people walk in and they can see exactly what's on your shelves and they can browse and walk through and they can leave and there's nothing to it. Where in the online space, you want them to hang out with you a little bit in a different way because it's harder to grab their attention, especially online when there's so much noise. I like to call it so much noise. I feel like the online space is so noisy because there's so many distractions and not just people in your own niche, but just, there's pictures of food and there's advertisements and there's, people's cute kids, and we get pulled in all these different directions when we're in the online. So what have you found has been the best way for you to help grow your business or help yourself and your clients grow their businesses online?
Yeah, so I would say there's two major things. One is consistency. And then two is don't try to be on every single platform. Be on one or two platforms and do them exceptionally well and be really consistent with being on those platforms. I know for me, specifically in my business, I started showing up very consistently in 2017. I was like the construction worker whose house was falling down because I was so focused on clients. I wasn't actually building my own list and all the things that I practice and all the things that I preach, right? And I do for clients, we weren't doing for ourselves. And so in 2017, and I'll share my story around this because I think it's valuable to people. So in 2017 and in late 2016, early 2017, I really started getting hyper consistent, right? Every week doing the Facebook Lives, every week doing this thing, every week doing that thing. And we've continued to add on layers of the different marketing initiatives that we have. Now we do the podcast and the YouTube and Pinterest, and literally we're on every platform. But And I don't recommend that for everybody because I have a team that helps me do that. But it's the more consistent I've gotten and the more I've really been able to get on a platform, understand the content that needs to go out on the platform, the more money that the business has made. And it's like direct correlation. So the more I can get consistent on that weekly, really not, no matter what, no exceptions, every week doing that Facebook Live or every week doing the Instagram Live or every week doing whatever, it makes a huge difference and an impact in the business for sure. So consistency and not overcommitting yourself. Because one thing that I see a ton of people make the mistake on is they're like, I'm going to be on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and all these platforms. And they are, but they're just not doing it super well. And ultimately it falls flat and then they don't get the results that they want. Or alternatively, they don't stick with it long enough to actually see the results.
Yeah. And it's so true that you have to, like, you want to be consistent showing up in 1 to 2 places, because when you get really good at those 1 to 2 places, then you can add, like you were saying, like you start to grow your team and you can start to add those different layers to it. And I talk to so many entrepreneurs that feel like they have to be on Instagram, Facebook, like they want to have their blog, they want to do Facebook Lives, they want to have a YouTube channel, but they haven't done any of them really well yet. So none of them are paying off, and they're getting burnt out and exhausted too quickly because they're spreading themselves too thin, to be quite honest. Where if they would just do one of those platforms and get really good at that, and then add like that next piece to it, that's when I like that's the secret. I feel like get really good, get really consistent, like you said, and then take it to the next level where you're like, okay, now I've been showing up this way, I'm going to add this piece to it as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think oftentimes people, when they do that, they spread themselves so thin. And then because they're not really leveraging the platform, they don't necessarily get the results that they're expecting. And because they're not getting the results that they're expecting, they're like, well, marketing doesn't work or social media doesn't work, right? Because they'll try it for a month or two and then not get the results. And then they'll be like, see ya, like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I see that a lot too. And it's really disappointing because in this day and age, it's so different. I mean, I had a woman who came to me who's buying a, $10,000+ package with us. And she's been following me for a year on Facebook. I had this woman, and I'm very good about like making sure I kind of have an eye. Like I see who likes, I see who comments, like I pay attention to that stuff. And this woman never had commented, never had liked, never engaged at all. She was literally just stalking the page. She's like, Jaime, your Outlier Marketing Group posts show up first in my news feed. I love your content. And then randomly, all of a sudden one day, she's like, I'm ready to hire the big guns. And she's like, I need your help. And $10,000+ later, she's here. And I think people get discouraged. They have this expectation because certain people get results really rapidly with social media. And that's not to say that you can't, right? You definitely can, but it's more of a labor intensive process where you're doing outreach, right? Versus pulling people into your community. And it's that consistency over time that gets people to be like, I know this person and I want to work with them.
Yeah, I love that you shared that story, because so often we feel like nobody's watching us. We make a post and we get like 2 likes. And I know a lot of people say like nobody was watching me when I started my Facebook videos because, it was only my mom watching, or like I had like a best friend or somebody like that who would go on and at least watch it with me. But it's so true. You don't know who's watching. You don't know who's listening. And a lot, like I do that. I'm a Facebook stalker sometimes. Like there's people groups that I'm in, and I watch their content sometimes, and sometimes I don't even I feel like I do try to like engage more now, just because I'm super hyper aware of it myself. Like I like to be engaged with, so I try to like give that love back. But I can definitely say probably like a year and a half ago, when I first really started focusing on the online marketing side, I was just watching people and I'd be like, oh, that's cool. That's good content. Okay. And I'd scroll and I'd continue through, and then I'd see them pop up again, and I, would read their posts. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't comment. And it's so true, because you don't know who's watching and who's listening. And when a year later, they're going to come back and be like, I'm ready. And you're like, who are you?
Right. And I think too, like, people are smarter nowadays, especially if you're in the business of working with other people who are in the online space. like they know if they interact too much, they're going to get retargeted with a Facebook ad, and they're aware of that. So they sit there and they stalk and they observe and they watch, but they don't necessarily interact. I mean, I know my own behavior when I'm done with work, like I don't want to be engaging on Facebook because that's such a big part of what I do. And I think for many of us, we forget that our ideal client is also someone who's in that space having to participate. And so, yeah, they're sitting there and they're watching, but they're not necessarily always engaging. Like likes do not correlate to how many people are actually going to take action.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think a lot of times too, we're afraid to be sold to, right? Like, so we feel like if I comment on your post, like you might go, oh, wait, come back here. Like, oh, you want to buy something? Yeah. And we're like, I think it's just that like, and I don't even know that everybody, like, I don't feel like I do that in my groups or anything, but I could see how like that used car salesman, like fear can pop in where we're like if you walk into the lot, like they're going to come talk to you and they're going to sell you a car while you're there. And they might, I feel like they feel the same way in a Facebook group sometimes. It's like if I put myself out there too much, or if people know that I'm here, they're going to ask questions and they're going to want to engage with me. And I'm not ready yet. I'm just still looking and watching and taking information in. Yeah. But like that client coming to you a year later, like that's the proof right there that when nobody's liking your comments and nobody's commenting, continue to do it because somebody, I guarantee you, your people are watching.
Yeah, and it's true. And it's, I can't stress it enough. And I mean, and I presented 4 different packages to this woman. She didn't have to buy the $10,000 plus one. I offered her a $300 one and a $10,000+ one. That's the one she chose. So for those of you who are listening, you're like, well, I don't have a $10,000 product and I don't have that much time to wait. It's like, it really depends on what your product suite is, right? And like, I'm always a huge fan of having like a couple of different products. I don't like having like 7 or 8 different things. I like having 1 or 2 or maybe 3. There might be like a VIP option to one of the things that I offer, but ultimately I think of it from the perspective of how this, like my ideal client, what's the progression that my ideal client is taking in their journey. And so I try to have something for somebody who's not quite as far along as my ideal person, because ultimately if I can help them get there faster, especially like even if it's just in my free Facebook group, they will then move on to the next product that I have. So it's that progression of products that also helps move people in the social media piece. So if you're hyper focused in a particular niche and you're saying, oh, I don't do this or this, well, I would also encourage you to be like, do you have like an ebook or a workshop that you could offer to these other people, and then maybe sell it on Evergreen, or maybe have it as a tripwire on your thank you page. And I know that's like a little diverted from social media per se, but like it's all part of that online space, because your social media, you want it to appeal to like not just that ideal client, but people like earlier on in that journey and people further on in that journey, right? Not just that. And I'm not saying not go for your ideal client. What I'm saying is think about what that journey is, right? And most of us, our ideal client is us X number of years ago, right? Yeah. Think about where they are on that journey and how you can usher them along on that via your social media.
Yeah. And it's so true. It's almost like you're leaving like breadcrumbs for them to, like you're leading them to your different offers. And some of them aren't going to come in at your VIP high level package because they're not ready. But if you have, an entryway so they can get to know how you work and they're going to get some quick wins and get some results quickly, they're going to quickly see like, this makes sense to me. I'm getting somewhere further, and I'm going to continue to watch what you're doing, because maybe I'm not ready for that package today, but maybe next month or next year I will be. And they're going to come back because they got so much value and so much impact from, the free content or the, the ebook.
Yeah.
The course or the workshop that you offer.
Yeah. And I'm just like the consistency, right? Just stay consistent.
Yeah. So speaking of consistency, what do you, I know that you talk a lot about having like macro content and micro content. Can you talk a little bit with us about like, how do you create big macro content that you can then take into bite-sized pieces to use so that you are showing up consistently without having to like write a new post every single day, because let's be honest, that's exhausting.
Yeah.
But if we create a big piece of content and then we use little pieces of that, it's so much easier to show up more consistently.
Yeah. So I define macro content as like a video or an interview like this, a YouTube, a Facebook Live, a podcast. It could even be a long form blog post if you're really into writing. But I always encourage anyone that I work with, like as the business owner, to step into that CEO role and be the person who makes the macro content. And it's usually either via video or audio in some way, shape, or form. And we always encourage people to make like an 8 to 12 minute video, which then results into a 5 to 7 page transcription, because we have you get them transcribed. And then from there, we then pull out social media quotes, posts, long form, short form, fill in the blank, all from that piece of macro content. So ultimately, your job as the business owner, or the CEO, or the entrepreneur is to create that macro content, which you can batch create 3, 4, 5, 10 of them at a time if you can manage it. And then you pass that off to an assistant or a VA to then pull out all of the micro content that goes on social media. And that micro content has a much shorter lifespan than macro content. So like a blog or a YouTube or even a Facebook Live is going to continue to pay dividends to you for a way longer period, days, weeks, months, potentially even years, especially with YouTube, versus a social media post that's hours, potentially days, maybe a week or two.
Yeah, no, that's so good.
Thank you.
So what are the best, how do you recommend people to take their macro content? And I know you mentioned like having it put in, like to have it like, I forgot, I'm losing the word. Help me out
Transcribed.
here. Thank you.
So
I'm like, it does something.
we use a service called Temi. It's an automated service. It's 10 cents a minute. It doesn't really clean it up. So if you have like a crazy accent or whatever, you say, I know I say from time to time, it will carry that into there. There's another service called Rev, which is $1 a minute. And so Rev is owned by Temi. Or Temi is owned by Rev, the other way around. So it takes it through the automated one, and then they have a human being go through and clean it up. So it's a little bit more per minute, but for the purposes that we use it for, we don't need it to be super clean, because then we're just pulling social media content from it. And if we need to delete something, we just delete something. And then we also take that transcription, and then we'll take it and make an email out of it. And we'll also make a blog out of it as well. And so it's like repurposed in lots of different places and ways, so that it's not all, the business owner can use this one thing and distribute it everywhere. And that's ultimately the goal. Like, how can we leverage this awesome piece of content to one, make sure that it's in the voice of the person and the brand, right? But how can we make it so you're not stuck on that hamster wheel where you're like, oh my God, it's 5 p.m. and I didn't post on social media today and I need to And it's like, you don't have to live like that. Like, you can make 4 videos or 4 10-minute podcasts, and that's content, like social content for you for probably the next 60 days.
Yeah, I love that you share that tip, because it's so, you're right. Just to repurpose your content, like it saves you, I think, your sanity in so many ways.
It totally does. It totally does. And when it's done right, like when you leverage it as a blog and you leverage it in multiple places, like we have a client who in fairness, she's a very niche business. She's a sleep expert, but she gets 5 to 7 leads a week off of Google by using this process. And she's like, I never even thought of taking my podcast and using it as a blog. And because she's doing that and it's SEO rich, she's getting these organic leads off of Google like all day long. And it's like, that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And she's been doing it for like 3 years. And every time I talk to her, she's like, oh my God, Jamie, you changed my world with this.
It's a simple process, which is what I love about it. You can just, and like we were talking earlier, like you can create one form of content. So whether that's your podcast or your video for YouTube, and then you can use that same content, and it looks like you're everywhere, right? Because you're able to take that podcast and you're transcribing it. So then you're showing up, you know, you have a blog on Pinterest because your blog can link to Pinterest, but you don't have to spend time on Pinterest. You can post it out to LinkedIn, but you don't have to hang out on LinkedIn if that's not where you're spending time, but you can still use that same material that you're creating and post it everywhere. Yep. Where you might not be engaging and spending a lot of time there. Like I know I do that. Like I create most of my content on Facebook, and then I take it and I repurpose, or actually I make it for my blog, I should say. And then I repurpose that in my newsletter, right? And then I'm taking that same information and pulling some of it onto my Facebook group and sharing some on Instagram. And you have to like tweak it because you can't share it in the same way in all the different platforms. But it still looks like I'm showing up in all of those places because there's content. And if somebody's on LinkedIn and they find something, they're going to be able to connect to me, even though I'm not, like, that's not my platform. I don't hang out over there a ton yet, but I'm still there. There's a presence.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I know at the beginning of this, I said, you know, take one or two platforms and own it. I still want you to do that, right? Even if you're taking this content and distribute it anywhere, because it doesn't hurt just to put it out there, right? On that other platform, and it can all be automated. And I always like to bring this up because there's always a skeptic that says, well, Jaime, you know, what if somebody says to me, like, I saw that you posted the same thing on this platform and this platform and this platform. And, you know, so they're hesitant to actually own this style of doing this. So number one, you can stagger the days. So if something goes out on Facebook, you change when it goes out on Instagram. So it's not each going out on the same days if that bothers you. Number one. And then number two, I would encourage you to take a step back and look at what many of the influencers are doing in this today's day and age. I know Brendan Burchard takes one piece of content and literally markets that same piece for 30 whole days. Russell Brunson, Marie Forleo, like all of those people, they make one really, really awesome piece of content and then they just make sure it's seen everywhere. And so when you can flip your thinking on this process, instead of being in that rat race and on that treadmill, it really makes a huge difference in your business. Because ultimately you can create in under an hour or two, you know, 60 days worth of content, and it's easy and it's done.
And it's such a smart way to do it because the whole idea behind it is just to be consistent and to show up and have new material being released. It doesn't mean you have to do like a whole entire YouTube video every single day for people to see it. Like you mentioned, like Marie Forleo, she does her one video per week and it goes out in her newsletter and it's on her Facebook page and she talks about it and they pull like little quotes from it, like you were saying. And it's so much easier when you simplify it and don't overcomplicate it and don't make it to where you're creating like brand new pieces every single day.
Yeah. And that free time, right? So like that 30 minutes that you're sitting there in a panic trying to figure out what to post every day, you can then take half that time, just 15 minutes, and go and engage, right? Like you can spend 15 minutes going engaging in a Facebook group or engaging with like new people and your profile or whatever platform you're on. You can use that time to engage and build relationships on the online space instead of just wasting that time in panic mode. All your other stuff's on autopilot.
Yeah, no. And that's where I think that's like the key to it, right? Is you're not just putting content out there. You're actually engaging with people. You're building relationships. You're building that know, like, trust factor. You're showing up. You're asking questions. You're answering questions. You're getting your name out there just because you're engaging. Just like if you're like at a networking event, right? In person, like you go to a cocktail party and you're talking to somebody, like you have to work the room a little bit. You have to, you know, say hi to people that you already know and see how they're doing, and then go up to somebody who you don't know and engage with them and, you know, get their information, see if you might collaborate in the future, or if you have, you know, mutual clients in common, or like how you can help each other out, or just even have what I call like raving fans. So that they're like, I love everything you do. Like I watch everything, or they're sending like all their clients to you, but you have to engage that way.
It's so true. And, you know, this reminds me of a Facebook. So I did a Facebook post in this huge women's group. I don't know, probably in 2012 or 2013. It was like right around the time my first son was born. And I remember I posted this post, and within minutes, I got this message from this lady that was like, oh my goodness, like I needed help with social media. Like I want to talk with you. So within the hour, I was on the phone with her. Then she signed up and then referred me to somebody else. And then that person referred me to somebody else. And I tracked it. I don't know. I haven't tracked it recently, but I tracked it, I want to say a year or so ago. And that one post that I did in a Facebook group, from all the referral business that I got from it, has made me over like $350,000.
Wow.
In my business along that time. And so for people who are like, oh, don't waste time in Facebook groups, it's like, absolutely spend a little bit of time in there and deliver value and be genuine and authentic. Don't spend all day in there.
Yeah.
But like the power of that actually being a human and connection and sharing your story makes such a huge difference, because so many people are like, let me pose with my Ferrari, or like, whatever. Let me rent this like $1 million house and, show you how awesome I am. And the reality is like, that doesn't work for most people.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no picture of me by the Eiffel Tower as part of my brand. You might find me there on vacation one day. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, you're right. Like they make up these personas
Yep.
of who they want to be known as. And most of them, like you said, like they've rented the Ferrari. It's not theirs.
Yeah.
They don't own it.
And I remember this because it was just like a picture of me and it was definitely after 2013, because my son was born at the time. It was just like a picture of me and my kiddo. And I was just genuinely introducing myself to the group. Like, hey, I'm Jamie. Here's what I do. Here's what I love personally. Like, I love to read. I love to this. I'm a new mom, blah, 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 blah. And like that message connected with this woman who then helped bring me like a whole ripple effect of business. And so that engagement piece, everybody forgets to do. It's like, let me push out all this content and have this expectation that droves of people are going to come to me. And it's like, that's essentially, to your point, like going to a networking event and just standing there and not talking with anyone.
Yeah. You're holding up the hors d'oeuvre table.
Right. That's literally just standing there and not saying or doing anything. And essentially, that engagement piece is really coming back around in social media right now. Like 2020 is only going to be more and more of that engagement piece, because people are tired of like the fake stuff in the online space. They really want that connection and making those relationships, because that's ultimately what social media was about in the first place. It was a way for you to connect with people who aren't physically there with you.
Yeah.
And it has snowballed into this, like, who can rent the biggest house that's not theirs and post pictures of it. And it's just, it's changing. It's definitely changing.
Yeah. And I love that it's coming back to that engagement piece, because that's where true relationships are built. That's where like you're connecting at a deep level. Like with the short story you were sharing, like it was a picture of you and your son. Like that's what people want to see. They want to see like what you look like when you're not behind, your computer screen with these like fake pose pictures. Like, how do you spend your time? What does your family look like? What do you actually like to do? Like, it's just being authentic and showing up as you truly are, and not trying to be somebody that you're not, and not try to like exhibit or whatever, like see what other people are doing and do what they're doing at the same time. Like, it's just be you. Like, if you don't love doing video, that's okay. Like, don't do a bunch of videos, just do an audio, write long. Like, if you like to write, like write a big blog. Like, you can show up in what ways are comfortable to you. It doesn't have to be like, oh, well, so-and-so is doing this, so it has to be the way to do it. Like, you have to.
There's no one size fits all in social media or online marketing at all. There's no one size fits all. It's what is going to work for you. And you might get a little uncomfortable in doing it, but like if you despise video, I'm never going to say to anyone, oh, you have to go on camera because that's what's working. It's like, you're never going to want to do that. That's going to be the last thing on your to-do list every single day. And it's never going to get done.
Or at least try it a couple of times. And if you for sure, like if it doesn't get easier, like I know for myself, like when I started, I was fearful of going like Facebook Live. Like that felt really scary, like to talk to myself and like not like I love like the summits because I can talk to you. Like I'm not just sitting here talking to myself, but like hitting the live button in the beginning was super stressful for me. Like I would like that little red light would like freak me out. And I'm like, but the more that I do it, I'm like, oh, it's actually not that bad. It's like most of it's just a story that I'm telling myself that I'm getting myself all worked up over nothing. And then I laugh because especially those first ones, like when you do go live for the first few times, no one actually is watching, right? Because it takes a while for the algorithm to even like let people know that you're doing these lives. So like we worry like, oh my gosh, 20 million people are going to see me. And what if I mess up? And then you're like, oh, only 2 people have watched it and it's been up for like 2 weeks now.
Right. I love Ecamm Live for that very issue. So you can actually pre-record your video with Ecamm Live. This is like one of my ninja tips. You can pre-record your video and then you can act as if you're going live on Facebook. When you do that, I highly recommend that you're there, like answering whatever questions in the comments. But it's a really great way for people who are very, very uncomfortable, but like want to make the effort to do it, you know, or they're like, I know if I keep doing this, I'll be able to do it. So if that feels like an issue, Ecamm Live. But yeah, you're so right. There's never, like when you first get started with Facebook Lives, there's not a lot of people on. And it's really not that scary. Like I personally love it when people are on and they comment and they engage and you can be like, hey, so-and-so, like what questions you got, you know?
It actually makes it easier because then you're not like the crazy lady who's talking to herself, right?
Yep. Yeah. My babysitters are always like, what do you do again? Like you're in your office talking to yourself a lot.
Right? You're like, do you need a friend? Like, do you need a therapist to talk to? Like, what's happening?
Right.
And then one of the other tips that I heard too is if you're that worried in the beginning, like create a fake Facebook group and just practice going live to like nobody. And then really nobody's watching. And so if you mess up, who cares?
Yeah. And I think, to me, like quote unquote, messing up, I don't really like be real. It's okay if you fumble your words. You don't have to be perfect. Like I personally have seen a decline in success from a behind the scenes perspective. Just pure data on the overly manufactured videos in the last 2 years. So anything that's highly produced, highly perfect is actually declined because they're sick of the fakeness. So, my suggestion for people who want to do video or want to do a podcast and they're like uncomfortable, and it does feel uncomfortable. I mean, I've been doing it for, I don't know, since 2015. I found a video from 2015. I was like, oh my God, this is so horrible. I have to share it with everyone. I'm like, it's such a good,
I've come.
Right? It's like, this is how far I've come. And create an outline for yourself. Like I used to take sticky notes and I still have them all over my desk. And I would be like, here are the 10 bullet points I want to cover. And I would literally tape them up around my desk on my monitor so that I couldn't see how many people were on. And I couldn't see what was going on, but I knew that if I started to like go off on like an off ramp or I went down like a rabbit hole or, I got way off topic, I'd be like, oh, okay, just go to the next one and go to the next one. And that is really out of the gate how I personally got really, really comfortable in doing it, especially with the lives. And it was always just like, if you veered off track too far, I would say that, oops, like I went a little off track there, got a little sidetracked. And then I would just literally go right back to my Post-it notes. Alternatively, the other thing for people is just literally saying like, hey, so if you see me look down, I got my notebook here. It's just to make sure I stay on track with what I want to cover today for you.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
It's okay. It's okay to have notes. Like I don't memorize, like I can't memorize anything, to be quite honest. My memory's never been like, I've never had one of those memories where I could practice and like do the whole presentation without like at least having like a rough outline. And I'm not talking that you don't want to script it to where you're like reading a script the whole entire time, but it's okay like to have those bullet points or have your notes next to you with like a couple, maybe like your opening sentence that you're going to say and like the high level points that you want to talk about and reference those. Like you don't have to look at the camera the whole entire time. Like you're a newscaster and you have a teleprompter right in front of you. I mean, you could because they even have apps now where you can have a teleprompter up while you're recording, but it doesn't have to be like that official. And you're right. Like if people don't want that perfect, I love bloopers, right? Like I think growing up, like I used to love when like the America's Funniest Videos and all those would show like the bloopers at the end of like all the mess ups, because those are funny. Those are real life. Those happen to all of us. And if you're not if they don't happen to you, or if you're saying they don't happen to you, you're lying to us, right? Like
Right. And it's funny. Sometimes some of that stuff, when you do kind of have a blooper, I have this one video on Facebook. It's still up there. You can go look at it. It's got like 15,000 views. It's called Fighting Content Overwhelm. And I had just gotten back from the gym, and I was so fired up about a client who was driving me crazy about not putting themselves out there, even though we talked about it like 7 or 8 times. They just kept excuse after excuse after excuse. So I was like, I'm going to make a video for you, X person. And so it's literally me with a hat on and my gym clothes on my iPhone I wasn't even on a desktop. I was on my iPhone vertical in my office. It is my most wildly popular video that I've ever done. And I could not, is probably the least favorite how I look in all of the videos that I've ever done online. But it's raw, it's real, it's passionate, it's authentic. And it converts.
And that's what people want. Like, that's what we need to provide for them, because we're not perfect and polished, and we don't have to be. Nope. So if you're not doing these things and you're listening to the summit, like, start doing these things. Like, just show up, be you, be authentic. You don't have to like have it perfect. If I wait to have my hair perfect and my makeup done perfect every single day, like, it's not going to happen. Most of the time I'm like in yoga pants, and maybe I have a shirt that looks kind of fancier than other days, but still, like, I'm still showing up comfortable and as me, and it's just, that's who I am. And your people are going to want to connect with you and follow you because they're your people. And the ones that don't get you, like, they're the ones that are going to leave, and that's okay, because there's plenty of business for everybody.
Yeah. And it's so true that you say that. And like, everybody gets these hyper styled brand photo shoots these days where they're like, makeup's all done and they've got like fake lashes on and they're like dressed to the nines. And I have never, ever done that. I've always done very lifestyle. Like, I wear the makeup that I usually wear. I wear the clothes that I usually wear, and they're pose pictures. Right. But like, for me, one of the things is very, very important is like, when you look at my Facebook picture, or if I am using one of those pictures that are taken by a photographer that are professional, and I hop on a Zoom call, I don't want to look like a completely different person to you, right? Or I hop on a Facebook Live. I don't want there to be like, this is Jamie? Mm-hmm. And there, so that's another piece where we also psych ourselves up when it comes to doing Facebook Lives. Like you just said, we have to have the perfect makeup and the perfect this and the perfect that. Well, if you never had those crazy, perfectly styled branded photos in the first place, you wouldn't feel that extra pressure on yourself to have to show up like that all the time. And if that's not truly you, then you got to go get new pictures. Because ultimately you got to have that has to make sense to people.
Yeah. And I agree. Like, I remember when I did my photo shoot, or I guess 2 photo shoots ago, one of the tips was to make sure that like I got my makeup done professionally. And we were doing like an 8:30 in the morning photo shoot. And I was like, there's no way, like, I'm just gonna, I'll put a little bit extra on, like maybe more, just so it's a little bit more camera friendly. Right. Yeah. And it's okay. Like, I didn't want to especially if you go like have somebody else do your makeup. The one time that I ever paid somebody to do my makeup was for one of my best friend's weddings. And I remember like fixing myself afterwards because I didn't look like me anymore. It was like somebody else's version of what they thought I should look like. And I was like, no, this is not me. So why would I do that for like my photo shoot?
Yeah, it's so true. And it's a big mistake that I see a lot of people make. It's a big mistake. And then it puts the pressure on you when you do go to do these lives, or you do go to be on a Zoom video, that you have to show up in this particular way. And it's like, because of that extra pressure of like, hey, I got to and whether it's subconscious or not, it's there. But I'm always like, just look like yourself. Don't put that added pressure on yourself to have that be the expectation.
Yeah. One of the other interviews that are part of the summit is on this very topic about, showing up online just as you do offline, so that, if you go to a retreat, like, everyone's going to meet you and they're going to be like, oh, like, you're exactly who I thought you were. You're not like over polished online. And then all of a sudden they meet you and you're like, that doesn't look anything like you. It always reminds me. And I don't think I've shared the story with the summit, but last year I shared the story. One of my mom's best friends was a realtor, and she had glamour shots. as like her realtor picture. And she used the same glamour shot picture for like 30 years. I'm not joking. Like I remember getting a Christmas card. She's no longer in the industry, so I haven't got a Christmas card from her in probably the past like 5 years, but probably like 6-7 years ago when I got that last one, it was her glamour shot picture from like years prior. And I just laughed to myself because I know her and I love her. And I was like, it's so funny that like, that's the picture she chose to use like for probably 15 years. She used the exact same picture. And it didn't look like her anymore. It did, but not. we age a little bit.
But but if that's your thing, right? Like if you do want to be glam all the time, like more power to you. Like there's nothing wrong with that either. Whatever is authentic for you is what you should do. Yeah. Like this is what I normally look like. Sometimes I have a winter hat on. Sometimes I have my glasses on, but this is generally my appearance, you know? Yeah. And I think that that's a really important thing that is emerging as we embark on 2020 in the social media world, that authenticity and not being like perfect on camera and not having everything be overly styled is coming back around. And it's a really, really amazing thing.
Yes. I could talk to you all day. But
likewise.
To kind of wrap things up, I have a couple of fun questions that I'm doing as part of the virtual summit this year to find out a little bit more about who you are. So I'd love to know if you have a morning routine, and if so, what does that look like? Share a little bit into like the morning life of Jaime.
Yeah. So morning routine, I typically get up between 4 and 5. I get up pretty early. I like to have that time to myself. I have 2 little kids, 6 and 2.5. So I need that space in the morning before they get up at 6:30. So essentially I get up, I typically read, meditate, work out, journal, and do my daily planning all before they get up at 6:30. So that's like my jam, and I love it. It's a lot of fun. I'm like centered for the day.
Yeah. No, and I love that because I call that like a slow morning is what I call it for myself. Like when I can get up and out of bed and come downstairs and have my coffee and journal or read a book or take time for me versus like have my kids pounce on the bed to wake me up. Like it's a different start, right? Like you're able to do it at your pace, and it's a more zen feeling. So I'm with you on that.
Yes. I've totally prioritized that in the past year and a half, because I've realized when I wake up with them, I'm not as good of a mom. I'm not as good of a parent. I'm not as good of an entrepreneur. Like I don't show up as well for my clients. And so it's a commitment I'm making to myself so I can be the best version of myself every day.
I love that. Yeah. And it's so true, because if your morning starts out chaotic, like it just transpires into like your morning with your business and like all the things, and like you're yelling at kids in the morning, trying to get cereal down their throat so that they can leave for school. And you're like, so yeah. All right. I'm curious, what book has made the biggest impact on your personal growth?
Oh, this is a tough question. I read a ton. I would say You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero.
Yeah.
I love that book, and I haven't actually sat down and read it. I've listened to it like 7 or 8 times. And every time I listen to it, I feel like I peel back a new layer of that book and the money mindset ceiling that I might be experiencing at the time. And oftentimes I'll encourage clients to listen to it, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I know that stuff. I've heard it before. And I'm just like, no, but you aren't listening to what she's really saying. Like listen to it again. I would say that one and The One Thing. The One Thing is like a game-changing book.
What's that one about? I don't know if I'm familiar with that one.
So it's, what is the one thing you can focus on each and every day that will help you achieve your like longer term goal? So if your goal is to build like a $1 million a year brand, what is the one thing you need to do every day to help achieve that? And he talks a lot about like how we have these big long to-do lists, and most of the stuff, like not all tasks are created equal, and oftentimes we're working on the wrong tasks that are actually going to move our businesses forward. So it's a really cool book when you think about it, and then you look at like what you're doing every day and you're like, oh, this is not actually moving me forward.
Right? You're doing all kinds of activities, but none of them are actually income producing or the ones that you need to be doing to grow your business and your brand. So that makes sense. That's a great, I love that one. I'm going to have to look that one up. And I'm curious, knowing what you know now, if you were to talk to like your early self when you started your business, what would be like that one thing that you wish you would have known that you would have changed?
Just get started. Stop overthinking.
Yeah.
I mean, I have been behind the scenes of launches in info products and online courses and stuff since the very beginning. And I hesitated doing it for myself because I thought like, well, who am I to do this? I'm some 28-year-old, 27-year-old kid. Like, what the heck do I know about doing this sort of thing? And that was the mindset I had at the time. And I held myself back for a really, really long time from actually putting myself out there and actually doing the things that I've supported so many people in doing.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I'm glad that you did. I'm glad that you started putting yourself out there.
Me too.
Look where you are now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And to tie everything together for the summit, my last question for you is, what does attract and stand out mean to you?
So I think attract is like, just, I think of it like a magnet, like pulling in, like literally like magnetizing people to you that are your like ideal clients. And then attract, and what was the other one? Sorry.
Stand out.
Stand out. I think standing out is just really owning who you are. So many of us, we want to try and hide behind these shields, and we're afraid to really be vulnerable. And I don't think you need to spill all your guts in the online world, but you can show up authentically and have, I don't want to say public persona, but public self versus private self. You can have a public self where you're still yourself. It doesn't have to be this shield with all of these like, you know, personality traits that you think that you should have, or you don't have to behave in a certain way. You can truly be yourself.
Yeah, no, I completely agree because just being you is enough.
Yep.
All right. Well, I know you have an amazing free gift for everybody as part of the summit. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I am giving away my free macro to micro training and blueprints on how to take a piece of macro content and turn it into micro content. So it's a 20-minute training. I'm a huge fan of short, simple, straight to the point. I'm not going to give you a lot of fluff. And then we give you 2 of the blueprints that we use in this process on how to take macro content and turn it into micro content.
Amazing. That is amazing. Thank you for that wonderful gift. I know so many people are going to be able to take that and just based off of our conversation plus that tool, they're going to be able to start cranking out all kinds of amazing content and stop stressing about creating little teeny pieces of content every single day.
Yep. That's the goal.
Yeah. And where do you like to hang out? So I know people are going to want to follow you. Where's your favorite place to spend your time?
I like Facebook and Instagram. So I would say those are my 2 favorite. We're both at Outlier MATG there. But I also have a podcast, the OMG Show. So I spend a lot of time there as well. I would say those are probably my top 3 favorites.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jaime, for being a part of the summit and sharing all of these amazing tips with us today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.